Welcome to today's deep dive
We are going way back in time.
to explore the roots of European civilization.
And trust me.
It's a lot more complex
Yeah.
and interesting.
I mean, I think.
Forget those history textbook narratives.
Because we're about to unearth.
The untold story of Europe's ancestors.
It's fascinating because when we think about early humans in Europe, Neanderthals often steal the show. But our sources today reveal a much more intricate picture. For instance, we're introduced to the blue man. These were the dominant folks in Europe for a surprisingly long time.
The blue man. Okay. You've piqued my curiosity. Tell me everything.
Okay, picture this. Europe teeming with these skilled artisans and toolmakers. Their culture woven into the very landscape. They were the bedrock, laying the foundation for the creative explosions that would follow.
So,
Yeah.
Are we talking about a level of sophistication that rivals even some of the better-known ancient civilizations?
Precisely. Their artistry, as seen in their intricate cave paintings, wasn't just aesthetically pleasing, it hinted at a complex understanding of the world around them, a deep connection to nature,
Right.
and possibly even spiritual beliefs. And remember, this was a continent-wide phenomenon, not just isolated pockets. They were interconnected, sharing knowledge and traditions. It really challenges our preconceived notions of early human societies.
Okay. I'm picturing a map of Europe, but with the blue man territories instead of modern countries. It's a whole new perspective.
Yep.
But I have to ask, where do other groups fit into this picture? How did Europe become the melting pot of cultures we know today?
Well, you can't tell the story without talking about that land bridge across the Mediterranean. It wasn't just a geographical feature. It was a highway for human migration.
And I'm guessing this is where the Adamites make their grand entrance.
Exactly. Migrating from Mesopotamia in search of new lands, the Adamites encountered the blue man and found themselves drawn to them.
And I get the feeling this wasn't just about territory.
Right.
This is where it gets juicy. Spill the tea.
You've got it. Our sources suggest a genuine attraction. The Adamites admired the blue man's resilience, their connection to the land, and yes, even their physical appearance. We're talking about intentional intermingling here, leading to a new group, the Cro-Magnons.
Hold on.
I know.
The Cro-Magnons, known for their incredible artistic skills, their bravery. This all stems from this fascinating cultural fusion.
Think of it like inheriting the best of both worlds. The blue man's deep-rooted strength, their understanding of the land, combined with the Adamites' ingenuity, their drive to explore and innovate. The Cro-Magnons emerged as a powerful force in Europe's prehistory. But their story, like all good stories, takes an unexpected turn.
Uh-oh. I sense a plot twist coming on. What happens next?
Just imagine, you're a Cro-Magnon, thriving in this newly blended society, when suddenly the world around you starts to change. And not subtly, but in dramatic, landscape-altering ways. We're talking about the formation of the Sahara Desert.
Wait, hold up. I always thought of the Sahara as this ancient, unchanging desert. To think it was once a fertile region, I can't even fathom the impact that kind of transformation would have on the people living through it.
Their entire world was upended. Imagine the Saharans, forced to migrate. Searching for new resources and fertile grounds, naturally, their eyes turned towards Europe.
So we've got this incredible confluence of cultures already in Europe, and now this massive migration of Saharans heading north. It's like adding another layer to this already complex tapestry.
And these environmental shifts weren't just happening in isolation, they had ripple effects across continents. As the Saharans moved north, they pushed other groups, creating a domino effect of migration and interaction. It's like a continental game of musical chairs, but with much higher stakes.
And in the midst of all this, we have the Cro-Magnons trying to hold their own.
Yeah.
But something tells me this is where the Andites enter the scene, right? Those master horsemen our sources mentioned.
You're way ahead of me. But you're right. This is where the story takes another dramatic turn. Picture this. The Andites sweeping into Europe from the east, their horses thundering across the plains. This wasn't just migration. This was a calculated takeover.
It's amazing to think about the impact horses must have had on warfare. I mean, we often associate technological advancements in warfare with much later periods, but here we have the advent of cavalry thousands of years ago, completely changing the game.
It's easy to overlook the significance of something as seemingly simple as horses. But think about it. The speed, the maneuverability, the sheer power they gave the Andites, it was a military advantage, unlike anything Europe had seen before.
No wonder the sources make such a big deal about this.
Yeah.
So how did the existing inhabitants of Europe, the Cro-Magnons, the Blue Man, react to this new threat?
Imagine being a Cro-Magnon, accustomed to a certain way of life, a certain rhythm of existence, and suddenly you're facing these fierce warriors on horseback. This wasn't just a clash of cultures, it was a clash of entire ways of life.
The stakes couldn't have been higher. It was a fight for survival, for the right to shape the future of Europe. Our sources mentioned the Somme Valley as a key battleground during this period. What was it about that particular region that made it such a flashpoint?
The Somme Valley, even then, was a sort of crossroads, a place where different cultures converged. It was strategically vital with fertile land and access to important trade routes. The Blue Men, including the Cro-Magnons, recognized its importance and made their stand there.
So the Somme Valley becomes this epicenter of conflict, a clash of civilizations that played out over centuries. I can only imagine the stories, the legends that must have emerged from that era. Did the Blue Man stand any chance against the Andites' military might?
They fought bravely, defending their territories with a tenacity born from generations of living in harmony with the land. But the Andites' military superiority, fueled by their mastery of horses and strategic organization, proved too formidable. Over time, the Andites gained the upper hand.
So the Andites ultimately conquered much of Europe. But did their culture completely overshadow those they conquered? Did the Blue Man and the Cro-Magnons simply fade away?
That's where it gets really interesting. You see, conquest doesn't always mean cultural annihilation. In fact, the Andites' culture, at least initially, went into a decline as they intermingled with the conquered populations.
It's almost ironic. The victors adopting some of the vanquished's ways. It speaks to the resilience of culture, the way it can persist, even in the face of overwhelming force. But we've been so focused on Northern Europe. I'm wondering what was happening in other corners of the continent during this time. Our sources hinted at the Mediterranean being a hive of activity.
You're right. While these dramatic events were unfolding in the heart of Europe, the Mediterranean was experiencing its own transformations. New players emerged, adding their unique flavor to the mix. One such group was the Adamsonites.
Adamsonites. Okay, this is a new one for me. Tell me more.
They were a seafaring people known for their craftsmanship, their intellect, and their striking appearance. They settled in what is now Greece, bringing with them a vibrant culture that would leave its mark on the region.
Now, I can't help but think about the ancient Greeks, their mythology, their art, their philosophy. Is it too much of a stretch to imagine these Adamsonites playing a role in laying the groundwork for what would become Greek civilization?
It's an intriguing connection, and you're not alone in thinking so. Our sources suggest that many of the myths and legends that define Greek culture might have their roots in the real-life migrations and achievements of groups like the Adamsonites. Those stories of gods, heroes, and superhuman ancestors. Perhaps they were inspired by the very real people who came before, shaping the land and the culture with their ingenuity and spirit.
That's fascinating. It adds a whole new dimension to Greek mythology, turning it into a kind of historical echo chamber. It makes you wonder how many other cultures' myths and legends are rooted in these ancient migrations and encounters. But let's bring it back to the bigger picture. With all this mixing and mingling of cultures, I imagine Europe's genetic and cultural makeup was becoming incredibly diverse.
Absolutely. It was during this period that the groundwork was laid for the distinct groups we see in Europe today. Remember, we're talking broad strokes here, not rigid categories, because intermingling was constant. But for the sake of understanding, our sources point to three major groups that emerged from this complex tapestry: the Nordic, the Alpine, and the Mediterranean.
So three distinct groups emerging from this incredible mix of cultures: the Nordic, the Alpine, and the Mediterranean. What set them apart?
Well, picture the Nordic people, primarily a blend of the Blue Man and those formidable Andites. They tended to be tall, often blonde, with an adventurous spirit that would later manifest in those legendary Viking voyages.
Makes sense. It's like those ancient migrations are echoing through history.
Hmm.
And what about the Alpine people? Where do they fit into this picture?
Nestled in the heart of Europe, they carried a strong Andinite influence. Think stockier, builds darker features, a culture shaped by the mountainous terrain they called home.
Okay, and last but not least, the Mediterranean people. What were they like?
As their name suggests, they were clustered around the Mediterranean Sea. A vibrant mix of Andite and Blue Man heritage, with influences from groups further south adding to their unique blend.
It's amazing how we can trace these ancient migrations in the diversity of European populations even today. But here's something I've been pondering. If these early Europeans were so widespread, so influential, why do we find relatively few artifacts from them compared to, say, the Cro-Magnons?
That's a question that puzzled archaeologists for a long time, and the answer, as it turns out, reveals a fascinating glimpse into their belief system. You see, the early white Europeans practiced cremation.
Cremation. So instead of burying their dead with possessions and tools like other cultures, they cremated them.
Precisely. And this seemingly simple practice has huge implications. While cremation leaves behind little in the way of material remains for archaeologists to uncover, it speaks volumes about their worldview, their understanding of life and death.
It makes you wonder what those beliefs were, what kind of afterlife they envisioned that led them to adopt such a distinct practice. It's like a tantalizing mystery, a gap in the historical record that sparks the imagination.
And that's what makes studying prehistory so captivating. We're constantly piecing together fragments of information, trying to reconstruct not just the events themselves, but the beliefs, the motivations, the worldviews that shaped those events.
It's like assembling a giant jigsaw puzzle, but with half the pieces missing. But those missing pieces, those gaps in our knowledge, only make the puzzle more intriguing.
Exactly. It reminds us that our understanding of the past is always evolving as we uncover new evidence and new ways of interpreting that evidence.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From the Blue Man to the Adamites, the Cro-Magnons to the Andites, the formation of the Sahara Desert, the rise of horseback warfare, and the emergence of distinct European groups. It's been quite a journey through time.
And it highlights something truly remarkable. These ancient events, these migrations, these cultural exchanges, they're not just dusty relics of the past. They reverberate through time, shaping the world we live in today.
It's humbling, isn't it? To think that our languages, our cultures, our very identities are the product of these ancient journeys, these encounters, these triumphs and tragedies that unfolded over millennia.
It's a reminder that history is never truly over. It's alive in us, a continuous thread connecting us to those who came before and shaping the world we'll one day leave behind.
So as you go about your day, consider those echoes of the past, the ancient migrations woven into the fabric of your identity, the cultural exchanges that shaped your language, the stories whispered down through generations connecting you to those who walked this earth before. It's a legacy worth pondering.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to do a little digging of your own, to uncover a hidden chapter in your family history, or to explore a culture that piques your curiosity. After all, the journey of discovery never truly ends, does it?